Tonight on Y News. The Human Rights Victims Claims Board will soon publish the first batch of martial law victims qualified for compensation. The Department of Justice concludes its re-investigation into the Jew kidnapped slay case.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology reveals the draft executive order and proposed legislation for the implementation of the National Broadband Plan. A bill seeking higher fines to hospitals practicing no deposit, no admission policy is soon to be passed into law.
Y News begins now.
From the UNTV News and Rescue Command Center, this is Y News with Angelo Castro III and Darlene Basingan.
Good evening. The Human Rights Victims Claims Board will soon publish the first batch of martial law victims qualified to receive compensation. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
Around 4,000 victims of human rights violation are included in the first batch of qualified claimants of the compensation from the Human Rights Victims Claims Board. According to Chairperson Lina Sarmiento, they will post the list of claimants on their website and will publish it in newspapers 3 times in 3 consecutive weeks. In case no one appeals or objects, the compensation will be ready for release by last week of April or first week of May. The amount that they are going to receive will depend on the points the claims board had given unto them, wherein each point is equivalent to 20,000 pesos. Sarmiento says they will first distribute 50% of the amount that a claimant should receive until after they have already validated the remaining application.
Kalahati lang muna ang ating ibibigay para kung sakaling matapos na natin lahat ng nakapending na claims at malaman na natin yung totoong value ng 1 point, doon lamang natin i-adjust yung dapat nilang matanggap. Maaring ito'y lumaki, maaring ito'y lumiit.
Deceased or victims of enforced disappearances is equivalent to 10 points, 6 to 9 points for victims of torture, 3 to 5 points for arbitrary detention, and 1 to 2 points for analogous violations. All applicants will receive based on the result of the claims board's adjudication, either they pass or not.
Kung torture ang inaplayan nila at hindi naman torture yung aming binigay, nandun din yung paliwanag kung bakit. Dahil kami, may pinagbabatayan kami sa pagbibigay ng award ng puntos. Ito ay yung mga provision ng batas at saka yung mga ebidensyang kanilang isinumite.
The compensation will be distributed through the Land Bank of the Philippines via cash cards. As of today, there are more than 44,000 applicants still under the adjudication process of the Claims Board. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Malacañang explains the context of President Rodrigo Duterte's statements on martial law. It also hopes local government officials will help the national government in addressing terrorism and illegal drugs in Mindanao. Rosalie Cos will tell us why.
The Malacañang says President Rodrigo Duterte's remarks on martial law recently underscore the depth and breadth of lawlessness and violence in Mindanao. Based on the statement released by Presidential Spokesperson Undersecretary Ernesto Abella, the President's statement challenges the local chief executives in Mindanao to help in engaging fully in the regional challenges. Because if not, the President would be forced to enforce more drastic measures.
Either tulungan ninyo ako or I will declare martial law tomorrow.
President Duterte is determined to resolve the decades-long crisis in Mindanao, which are terrorism and illegal drugs, within his term. He encourages local officials to use their police and military force under them. However, if the situation worsens, he is left with no other option but to declare martial law in the second biggest island in the country.
Ang problema kasi, ang martial law, the military and the police would be higher than you already in terms of authority at lahat. Ayaw kong gawin yan. Ayaw kong gawin. Kahit tulungan ninyo ako. Gamitin ninyo ang pulis. Total nandyan yan.
Malacañang says President Duterte is hopeful that local leaders would realize the magnitude of the problem in Mindanao and help the administration in fighting terrorism, illegal drugs, and violence. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacañang.
A lawmaker urges the lower house to investigate the tax system imposed on religious institutions as well as their existing investments. Nel Maribuhok will tell us why.
A proposed tax measure is being drafted by one ang Edukasyon Party List Representative Salvador Belaro regarding imposition of taxes on the investments of religious institutions. This after House Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez ordered the House Committee on Ways and Means to look into tax system applied in schools owned by religious groups. Belaro wants to push for an investigation on the matter to clarify tax exemptions given to religious institutions.
May mga exemptions kasi not only for religious institutions but also charitable institutions. And they should stick within the parameters of the exemption granted by the Constitution. Kasi may purpose yun eh.
According to the 1987 Constitution, tax exemptions apply on investments exclusively used for religious or educational purposes. But despite this, Congressman Belaro says there are some who uses this provision of the Constitution for their investments which are apparently not covered by the law.
Diba, some schools are also, pag nakakuha na sila ng reserve funding or extra money, pinapaikot na sa money market or din-deposit na sa banks, diba? So, these are not actually used for education.
Belaro target his proposed tax measure to be incorporated to be passed alongside the Duterte administration's tax reform package. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, House of Representatives.
Department of Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez has warned against those buying fake tax stamps. Aga Kakbay will tell us why.
During the Reform Roadshow of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Makati City today, Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez gives emphasis that buying fake tax stamps is against the interests of the country. For this reason, the Finance Secretary says the government has been implementing an intensified campaign against those violating the country's tax laws. He says the government has already issued a warning to individuals selling fake tax stamps on the internet.
In fact, I just wrote a letter to Jack Ma to ask him to remove it from his website because that's hurting the Philippine interest.
The government is now going after the mighty corporation for using fake tax stamps on its cigarette products. However, Dominguez notes that the lawyers of the said firm are hindering the fast resolution of the case.
Well, we are still counting. We've had a bit of difficulty in counting because according to Billy Dulay, the head of the BIR, there was a troop of lawyers from Mighty who were objecting to every little thing the BIR wanted to do. So the count has been slowed. So we are still in the process of determining the total amount from just the 3 warehouses. We're moving very quickly to lift the TRO. We have already discussed this with the Executive Secretary and with the Department of Justice. Yes, and we will pursue lifting it.
After the said issue came to light, the government has vowed to hold liable companies that violate the country's tax laws. Dominguez calls on the public and companies to avoid entering into illegal transactions, citing that the administration's push for a tax reform would be for the betterment of Filipinos. Aga Kakba, UNTV News and Rescue, Makati City.
Government agencies would soon be required to issue permits and licenses for the establishment and operations of telecommunications and broadcast towers in the country. Aiko Miguel will tell us why.
The Department of Information and Communications Technology has presented during the Telco Summit today the draft executive order for the implementation of the National Broadband Plan. The draft EO states that all local government units and agencies are mandated to issue permits and licenses for the establishment and operations of telecommunications, broadcast, and other public service towers. The ICT has also presented the draft legislative bills it will submit to Congress. The proposal seeks to amend several presidential decrees on the construction of buildings across the country and to allow the government to build towers or cell sites in subdivisions and residential areas. 4 Memorandum of Agreements and 3 Memorandum of Understanding were signed today on the National Broadband Plan between DICT and other government agencies, stakeholders, regulators, industry players, and experts.
All the MOAs we will implement. Itong isang executive order, forward ko sa presidente natin asking him to issue the executive order. Telecommunications is not only a public service, it is a national concern.
Once the President signs and moves to implement the draft EO, LGUs will be obliged to issue permits within 7 days. DICT Secretary Rodolfo Salalima also clarifies that the EO will not affect the contracts of private companies who want to acquire huge bandwidths for faster internet connection. This is because, Salalima says, DICT has a separate program under the National Broadband Plan that mandates a more accessible and faster internet.
Basically, it is wireline. Di ba? May components niyan na wireless. Then, mangangailangan tayo ng frequencies. Yung frequencies naman, I am looking at the TV white space. These are frequencies formerly used by the broadcast company na pwede nang gamitin ng mga telecommunications company.
A study of the US-based content delivery network Akamai reveals that in the third quarter of 2016, the Philippines' average internet speed has been 4.2 Mbps, which ranked 103rd worldwide in terms of internet speed. Salalima says that with the National Broadband Plan, which the government targets to implement within 6 months, Filipinos will able to experience a faster internet speed. He also vows that the DICT will try to achieve an internet speed faster than the standard 5 Mbps.
We will try to let's try to equal the global standard at 5, and kung kakayanan natin, whatever is the standard, habulin natin.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
Senator Lauren Legarda hopes for a resolution expressing Senate concurrence to the Paris Agreement to be passed in final reading next week. Joyce Balancho will tell us why.
Before the Senate takes its session break, environment advocate Senator Lauren Legarda will push next week for the passage in third and final reading a resolution expressing Senate concurrence to the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Under this international treaty, nations will join in efforts to reduce to 1.5 degrees Celsius the global warming limit to avoid adverse effects of climate change. Today, the global warming temperature is being pegged at 0.85 to 1 degree Celsius, according to the report of the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP. Now we are experiencing intensity of weather extremes and increased number of hot days and nights per year. This condition can worsen in the coming years if nations will not take action. The report also states that if global temperature reaches 2 degrees Celsius, it can result to more climate-related disasters that will destroy livelihood and can worsen situation of food and water supply. To limit the global temperature to 1.5 degrees, the Paris Agreement will compel nations to solve air pollution, limit their greenhouse gas emissions, and resort to renewable sources of energy. While President Rodrigo Duterte moved to sign the international treaty last week, Senate concurrence will be needed to complete the ratification process.
It's an important agreement, and it's a much awaited agreement. And in fact, even the Liberal Party, the minority now, urged President Duterte last year to ratify the agreement.
This Wednesday, Legarda sponsored on the plenary floor the resolution, which was passed in second reading without any objections. If ratified, she said the country will be given access to a fund that can be used to combat the effects of climate change. This is important to the Philippines, being a vulnerable country to disasters and calamities.
Now that we are on our way of completing the ratification process of the climate agreement, we can now access part of the Green Climate Fund. There's supposed to be $100 billion by 2020. I think now there's $10 billion, not just for the Philippines, but for the world.
More than 100 nations ratified the Paris Agreement, including United States and China, that are said to be among the biggest greenhouse gas emitters. Joyce Balancio, UNTV News and Rescue, Senate of the Philippines.
Malacañang expresses concern over the presence of Chinese survey ships in Benham Rise. Benham Rise is located at 250 kilometers northeast of Isabela, which the United Nations declares as Philippine territory. Presidential spokesperson Ernesto Abella says the Department of National Defense has already informed the Department of Foreign Affairs about the report. Abella notes that the Philippines is insisting on asserting its sovereignty over the said territory. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana previously said that Chinese survey ships were also spotted last year in the Reed Bank in the West Philippine Sea and near Benham Rise. Lorenzana has already instructed the Philippine Navy to accost and drive away Chinese ships spotted near the area. Meanwhile, days are counted for hospitals imposing a no deposit, no admission policy. Monokson will tell us why.
Hospitals implementing the no deposit, no admission policy will face higher penalties once House Bill number 5159 or the Anti-Hospital Deposit Bill is passed into law. The said bill has already passed the second reading in the lower house of Congress, while its counterpart in the Senate is on the committee level. Under the bill, fines imposed to violating hospitals is increased to 500,000 pesos for first offense, 1 million pesos for the second offense, and imprisonment of 4 to 6 years for the third offense. Licenses of hospitals found to be violating the law for the third time will be revoked or suspended. The President, Chairman, Board of Trustees of the hospital will also be fined.
Talagang yung violation ay kumbaga repeated offenses eh. Kasi dati 100,000 lang yung penalty. So we just increase it because ang penalty ngayon time pa ho ng batas pambansa no panahon ni Marcos.
The proposal also seeks the creation of mediation board under the Department of Health that would resolve complaints before the formal filing of cases at courts. Martin is experiencing serious nose bleeding recently. Because of fear, he immediately went to a nearest hospital. However, the hospital did not accommodate him because he had no money for deposit that time.
Parang wala silang planong iakit ako eh. Kasi kung iakit ako, nag-uusap pa sila sa loob eh. Pasilip-silip. Tapos, sino yung kasama niya? Okay lang naman sa akin. Kasi wala naman akong pera eh.
If the anti-hospital deposit will be passed into law, the hospital who refused to accommodate Martin will be penalized. Lawmakers in the lower house are hoping that the Senate will also pass the bill's counterpart or the Senate Bill number 216 soon, which aims to increase penalties against hospitals refusing to accept patients without money for deposits. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The Metro Manila Development Authority or MMDA will impose a ban on light trucks traversing EDSA. Joanne Nano will tell us why.
Beginning March 15, light trucks are no longer allowed in EDSA. This after the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority or MMDA and Metro Manila mayors agreed on the measure in order to decongest the heavy flow of traffic in EDSA. Based on the resolution released by MMDA, trucks with gross capacity of 4,500 kilograms and below will be covered by the ban. These are mostly delivery and pickup vans usually used to transport grocery items, vegetables, and also garbage.
Basically, ang mangyayari po dyan, the light trucks we have counted, they number more than 3,000 a day. EDSA pa lang yon. And ang gagawin lang naman po natin dyan is not a total ban, but ban them during peak. Other than that, pwede naman ho sila.
Light trucks will also be banned to traverse Shaw Boulevard in Mandaluyong and in Pasig City.
Hiningi ng dalawang cities yan, ng Pasig at Mandaluyong. Hiningi nila kasi napansin nila na doon pupunta lahat ng magbabypass ng EDSA and C5.
Under the new regulation, the truck ban will take effect from 6 to 10 in the morning and from 5 to 10 in the evening from Mondays to Saturdays. It will only be suspended during Sundays and holidays. Meanwhile, trucks loaded with perishable goods may be exempted from the ban if they apply for exemption from MMDA. A dry run of the measure will be done from March 15 to June 15 this year, after which an assessment will be done as to the effectiveness of the measure in easing traffic congestion in EDSA. Joan Nano, UNTV News and Rescue, Makati City.
The Department of Public Works and Highways estimates that the travel time from Cavitex to SLEX will soon become 45 minutes faster. John Nano is back to tell us why.
The Department of Public Works and Highways and MP Kala Holdings Incorporated signed an agreement for the construction of the Cavite-Laguna Expressway that will connect Cavitex and South Luzon Expressway. The Calax project will have 4 lanes and 45 kilometers long starting from Cavitex in Kawit, Cavite and will pass through SLEX Mamplasan Interchange in Binyan, Laguna. It will have 8 interchanges and 1 main toll barrier. The Calax will be divided to 2 sections, the Cavite and Laguna sections. The government targets to start the construction of the Laguna section in April, while the Cavite section in July. The entire project is expected to be completed in July 2020.
Sa April 4 po, magkakaroon po ng groundbreaking at meron na pong civil works sa April. Meron na pong contractor, so we'll be able to see the movement as early as April.
Meanwhile, DPWH has created a task force that would supervise the faster processing of right-of-way acquisition in areas covered by the said project.
Magiging involved yung mga departments kagaya ng DILG, DNR, of course the Solgens, NHA. So makakaroon po sila ng regular meetings para mapabilis yung proseso ng right-of-way.
DPWH estimates that the travel time from Cavitex to SLEX will become 45 minutes faster after the construction of Calax project. It is also expected to help ease heavy traffic in parts of Governor's Drive, Aguinaldo Highway, and Santa Rosa Tagaytay Road. Joan Nano, UNTV News and Rescue, Taguig City.
Next on Y News. The Department of Justice concludes its reinvestigation into the G. Ikju kidnap slay case.
And the National Capital Region Police Office tightens measures for new police recruits.
Y News will be right back.
Y News would like to thank the following: Engine Industries, Grand Eagle Cookware, Darwin D Trading Medical Supplies, 7M Construction and Development Corporation, Energy Tech Engineering Services and Trading, Elpan Consultancy Services Corporation, Summit One Business Solutions Incorporated, 347 School and Office Supplies Incorporated.
Prosecution panel of the Department of Justice maintains that illegal drug trading is the appropriate charge against Senator Laila De Lima for allegedly demanding and extorting money and vehicles from a high-profile inmate in the New Bilibid prison. Roderick Mendoza will tell us why.
Senator Laila De Lima's motion to junk one of her illegal drug trading cases was heard today by Muntinlupa RTC Branch 205, presided by Judge Amelia Fabros Corpuz. During the hearing, the court directed De Lima's lawyer to file a reply on the opposition of the DOJ prosecution panel within 10 days. In their comment, the DOJ panel maintains that they filed the right charges against the senator.
We maintain that the offense violated is still under the Republic Act 9165. So we maintain that the case we filed against accused De Lima and Dera are correct.
The case stemmed from the alleged conspiracy between De Lima and co-accused Jose Adrian Dera to demand and extort money and vehicles from inmate Peter Co for her senatorial campaign. But De Lima's lawyer argues that the charges should be junked because two offenses are being alleged in the information filed by DOJ. Duplicity of suits is a ground for dismissal.
We feel that the information provides for a duplicitous offense, so direct bribery and the other kind plus the drugs.
The court has set the motion for another hearing on April 21. The RTC also directed De Lima's lawyer to comment on DOJ's motion asking for the consolidation of the cases before the sala of Judge Juanita Guerrero of Muntinlupa RTC Branch 204.
We're still studying kung ano yung epekto ng consolidation, kung if it's really legally possible, they consolidate with the other cases.
According to Judge Fabros Corpuz, she will decide all the motions in a single resolution. Roderick Mendoza, UNTV News and Rescue, Muntinlupa City.
The Department of Justice has concluded its investigation into the kidnapping and slaying of Korean businessman Ji Ik-ju. During today's hearing, almost all respondents in the case have submitted their counter-affidavits, including the 3 National Bureau of Investigation officials implicated in the case. In their joint counter-affidavit, Deputy Director Jose Yap, Regional Director Rick Diaz, and Attorney Roel Bolivar strongly refuted allegations that they had participation in the crime. The complaints have been submitted for resolution. Meanwhile, the chief of the PNP Anti-Kidnapping Group, Police Senior Superintendent Alan Macapagal, was given until March 17 to answer SPO3 Ricky Santa Isabel's accusation that he is involved in the crime, after which the Department of Justice will release the result of their reinvestigation.
A police officer who was tagged as a member of the Davao Death Squad has been reassigned to Camp Crame. Victor Cosare will tell us why.
PNP Chief Police Director General Ronald De La Rosa confirms that Superintendent Antonio Rivera has been reassigned to Camp Crame. Rivera was previously assigned in Davao City and was tagged by retired SPO3 Arthur Las Cañas as a member of the Davao Death Squad, a group allegedly responsible in several extrajudicial killings in the city. However, the police chief clarifies that the reassignment is not related to Las Cañas' revelations.
Kasi nakiusap siya na mag-retire na siya within this year at gusto niya na ma-process niya yung kanyang retirement papers. At saka si Colonel Rivera, dahil nga mag-retire na, nilagay ko as deputy chief ng PTC4, yung permit to carry firearms outside of residence.
De La Rosa says he has yet to talk to Rivera about his alleged involvement with the so-called Davao Death Squad. The police chief also finds no irregularity in reassigning Rivera since the latter is not facing any charges. Meanwhile, De La Rosa is still mum after Las Cañas also tagged him as part of the Death Squad.
Hindi mo na ako mag-comment yan dahil baka biglang mag-open yung Senate, ma-preempt yung investigation ng Senate kung mag-reopen ulit, saka na ako mag-comment. Sa importante, mabait ako ng police.
The Davao City Police will also investigate the other police officers mentioned by Las Cañas as members of the DDS. On the other hand, the PNP chief says the mandatory age of retirement must be followed as an answer to the rumors that he will be extended as the top cop in the police force.
Once you reach the mandatory age of retirement, that is 56 years old, you have to retire. Nakakapagod na rin, kailangan mag-relax na rin tayo.
De La Rosa will reach the mandatory age of retirement by January of next year. Victor Cosare, UNTV News and Rescue, Davao City.
The PNP Drug Enforcement Group has launched a manhunt operations against high-value targets following the recent drop in market prices of illegal drugs. Grace Casin will tell us why.
Prior to the suspension of PNP's anti-illegal drugs operation, the price of illegal drugs in the market ballooned to 5,000 pesos per gram. But recently, the PNP Drug Enforcement Group or PDEG is alarmed by the report that the price of shabu has dropped anew to 1,000 pesos per gram. It implies that the proliferation of illegal drugs has restarted. For this reason, PNP has reactivated its manhunt against drug suppliers in the market.
Dito sa Drug Enforcement Group, yung pinaka-mission natin dito is on high-value targets with high impact. So yung targets natin dito are financiers, manufacturers, distributors, traffickers, kasama po yung lahat ng protectors.
As ordered, Mijares said they imposed strict screening and background checking for their men in accordance with the directive that only PDEG personnel are allowed to conduct an operation. Likewise, they have requested supplies of body cameras to be used during the operations.
Mula sa members ng PNP Drug Enforcement Group, papunta sa Regional Police Drug Enforcement Units, down to the Station Police Drug Enforcement Units, they are the only ones authorized na mag-operate. So hindi lahat ng kapulisan natin to the different stations ay pwede mag-operate.
PDEG is still in coordination with the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency and Armed Forces of the Philippines when conducting anti-illegal drugs operation. Director Mijares says they have talked to the Department of Justice with regard to all pending high-value cases in the court involving policemen. This include the case of former PDEA official Marine Lieutenant Colonel Ferdinand Marcelino and the discovered shabu laboratories in Subic, Arayat, Cagayan, and Apari. Meanwhile, PNP-DEG has set up its own counterintelligence task force to regularly check the work of their men to prevent them from involvement in anomalies and corrupt practices. Grace Casin, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
The National Capital Region Police Office will be imposing stricter measures in accepting new recruits. Lea Ilagan will tell us why.
The National Capital Region Police Office will have newly graduates from Philippine Public Safety College undergo 45 days training before giving them assignments. Said training will focus on character improvement and instilling discipline on the newly graduate policemen. NCRPO spokesperson Police Chief Inspector Kimberly Molita says an initial of 800 cops have already undergone disciplinary training to improve their character before assigning them to the 5 districts of the NCRPO.
Provide more training on discipline, much more on discipline and ethics and morals. Yun yung tinignan natin. Not anymore the tactical, hindi na yung barel, hindi na exercise. It's more of the ethical standards or moral issues.
The police official admits many of the cops involved in malpractices are non-commissioned officers or those with rank of Police Officer 1 to Senior Police Officer 4 or those who were not able to graduate from a police academy. This is why the NCRPO seeks to improve the character and instill discipline on the new cops so they could not be enticed to commit illegal act.
Gusto kasi ni Director Albay lagang lahat ng PO1 bago namin i-deploy sa NCR region ay magkaroon ng dagdag na disiplina sa kanilang mga sarili to contribute also to the internal cleansing. We want to address all the aspects of the internal cleansing, not only of those people already on the ground, but also those before we deploy them.
PNP has long been seeking to have the authority to train their police recruits so it could help improve their characters. However, PNP is still waiting for the matter to be discussed anew and be approved by Congress. Lea Ilagan, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Crame.
President Rodrigo Duterte issues Executive Order Number 15, creating the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs, or ICAD. The chairperson is the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, which has the overall responsibility to ensure that the objectives of the ICAD and the clusters created are met. There are 20 member agencies of the ICAD and 3 clusters, namely Enforcement, Justice, Advocacy, and Rehabilitation and Reintegration clusters. Among the functions of the ICAD are to ensure the effective conduct of anti-illegal drug operations and arrest of high-value drug personalities down to the street-level peddlers and users, and spearhead and coordinate the implementation of the National Anti-Drug Plan of Action. ICAD shall also seek the assistance of the Office of the Ombudsman in the investigation and prosecution of public officials involved in illegal drug activities.
Rogue cops in Region 3 will not be reassigned to Mindanao. Ray Pelayo will tell us why.
Instead of deployment to Basilan, erring cops will have their own rehabilitation center in Camp Olivas in Pampanga, where they could undergo a reformation and transformation program like drug surrenderers. PNP Central Luzon is among the regions with the highest number of rogue cops reassigned to Mindanao due to involvement in various cases. Central Luzon Regional Director Police Chief Superintendent Aaron Aquino says, of the more or less 200 cops reassigned to Basilan, many went AWOL, while others already died. Aquino says starting today, he will be the one to push for reform to rogue policemen under his watch.
Nakita-kita ko kasi parang may pagkukulang ako bilang regional director. Unang-una, naipatapon ko ito sa Mindanao na hindi ko man lang sila nabago, hindi ko man lang sila na-transform.
Like drug surrenderers, erring cops will have their own bahay pagbabago in Camp Olivas in Pampanga. About 100 cops will undergo the program, which is expected to begin upon the availability of facilities. The Police Regional Office 3's partners in implementing the program will be groups from various sectors. It will run for 3 months and will include spiritual counseling, psychological testing, and discipline lectures.
This company will transform them. Kami ang magta-transform. Naisip ko na ako na mismo magta-transform sa kanila na. So kung nga mga surrenderers na ito na related sa drugs, kaya kong binigyan ko ng pagkakataong baguhin. Bakit hindi yung kabaro ko na pwede ko naman baguhin siguro yung mga ugali nito para makapag-serve sila at sa mga kanila, sa ating mga kababayan.
Aside from rogue cops, lazy and vicious policemen will also be part of the program, as well as those who tend to neglect their families. Aquino meanwhile warned that those who will not change after undergoing the said program will face complaints and be sent to Mindanao. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
Senator Grace Poe is pushing for an inquiry into the increasing number of overworked Filipinos, or those working beyond 48 hours every week in the past 20 years. In Resolution 316 filed by Poe, she argues that stress at work caused by long working hours can lead to serious illness or even death. The senator noted that according to the Philippine Statistics Authority, the number of overworked Filipinos has reached 8.8 million in 2015, a 4.5% increase since 2005. Poe emphasized the need to study the policies of companies imposing long working hours to its workers. She says labor laws have to be amended as well to ensure the humane working conditions of employees. The senator further noted the importance of helping employees achieve a work-life balance to ensure that they will have enough time for work, self, and relationships.
Stronger business partnerships and relations are seen with the country's hosting of ASEAN and the EU Business Summit. Leslie Lungbowen will tell us why.
The European Union and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations have reaffirmed strong ties during the 5th ASEAN-EU Business Summit held in Pasay City today. The summit has addressed issues affecting the financial integration and inclusion, non-tariff barriers, support from industry to local communities, and the automotive industry. The EU-ASEAN Business Council has also welcomed the announcement of formal discussions on the establishment of a framework for an eventual EU-ASEAN free trade agreement. The EU is the largest source of foreign direct investment into ASEAN and its second largest trading partner. This year's Business Summit is the first to be hosted by the Philippines. It is seen beneficial for the country as it opens doors for additional foreign investments, hence creating more business partnerships.
In particular, the Philippines pushed various efforts to deepen the trade relationship between the two regions. Moreover, governments and businesses in both regions should work closely together to push for sustainable and inclusive growth and prosperity.
The EU is ready to commit to greater cooperation and closer relations with ASEAN and its individual members. If other doors are closing, ours will stay open.
This 5th ASEAN-EU Business Summit follows the Philippines' appointment to the ASEAN chairmanship in September of last year. The event coincides with the 40th anniversary of the EU, 50th anniversary of the ASEAN, and 40th year of the ASEAN-EU relations. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasay City.
Coming up, South Korea's Constitutional Court upholds the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye.
And know more about a smartphone in the form of a pair of eyeglasses.
More from Y News after this break.
Y News would like to thank the following.
South Korea's Constitutional Court upholds the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye, officially removing her from office. Eric Ferrer, please tell us why.
South Korea's Constitutional Court upheld the impeachment of President Park Geun-hye today, March 10th, over a graft scandal involving big businesses that has gripped the country for months. Park becomes South Korea's first democratically elected leader to be forced from office. According to the Constitution, a presidential election will be held in 60 days.
피청구인을 파면함으로써 얻는 헌법 수호의 이익이 압도적으로 크다고 할 것입니다. 이에 재판관 전원의 일치된 의견으로 주문을 선고합니다. 주문, 피청구인 대통령 박근혜를 파면한다.
The ruling to uphold Parliament's December 9th vote to impeach Park over an influence peddling scandal is the most dramatic twist in a political crisis that has gripped the country for months. 65-year-old Park was accused of colluding with a friend Choi Soon-sil and a former presidential aide, both of whom have been on trial, to pressure big businesses to donate to two foundations set up to back up her policy initiatives. She was also accused of soliciting bribes from the head of Samsung Group for government favors, including backing a merger of two Samsung affiliates in 2015 that was seen as supporting the succession of control over the country's largest chaebol conglomerate. Park has denied any wrongdoing. Eric Ferrer, UNTV News and Rescue, South Korea.
About 100 people took part in a disaster training drill in downtown Tokyo today. Danny Tixon will tell us why.
A day before the 6th anniversary of the March 11 earthquake and subsequent nuclear crisis, an earthquake drill was held in Tokyo, joined by around 100 residents. Participants were able to experience walking through a plastic tent filled with yellow smoke, get hands-on training using automated external defibrillators, and receive free emergency rations.
毎年参加させていただいて、特にAED とかそういうのの数が多いんでびっくりして、今日はもうびっちり訓練させていただきました。
A session run by local firefighters also offered participants first-hand experience in using a fire extinguisher and spraying water at a target. The training drill at Roppongi Hills, one of the Tokyo's high-end shopping and business districts, is held once a year, in part to keep fresh the lessons learned from the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear crisis on March 11, 2011.
私が近しい人が震災に遭っているので、1年に1回かもしれないですけれども、そういうことがあったんだっていうのを忘れないようにするっていうのはすごく大事だと思います。はい
Earthquakes are common in Japan, one of the world's most seismically active areas, which accounts for a fifth of the world's earthquakes of magnitude 6 or larger. Japan's strongest quake on record was one of magnitude 9 that struck the northeast coast on March 11, 2011, unleashing a massive tsunami and killing nearly 20,000 people, besides setting off the world's worst nuclear crisis since Chernobyl. Danny Tigzon, UNTV News and Rescue, Tokyo, Japan.
Environment advocate Greenpeace has filmed an alarming sight of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Nina Bascon will tell us why.
Greenpeace Australia Pacific have released video documenting bleached coral on parts of Australia's Great Barrier Reef in what the organization says is for a record second year in a row. Marine biologist and conservation photographer for Greenpeace Brett Monroe Garner filmed the coral on February 20. In a statement via Greenpeace, Garner said he's been photographing a specific area of the reef for several years now, and what he saw was unprecedented. Bleaching occurs when the water is too warm, forcing coral to expel living algae and causing it to calcify and turn white. Mildly bleached coral can recover if the temperature drops. While bleaching occurs naturally, scientists are concerned that rising sea temperature caused by global warming magnifies the damage, leaving sensitive underwater ecosystems unable to recover. UNESCO's World Heritage Committee stopped short of placing the Great Barrier Reef on an in-danger list last May, but asked the Australian government for an update on its progress in safeguarding the reef. The Great Barrier Reef at 348,000 square kilometers or 134,400 square miles is the biggest coral reef in the world. Nina Bascon, UNTV News and Rescue, Melbourne, Australia.
Athletes will not be barred from entering the United States if Los Angeles wins bid to host the 2024 Olympic Summer Games. Meanwhile, the International Olympic Committee freezes its financial support to Kenya. Aaron Romero will tell us why.
The International Olympic Committee, or IOC, freezes financial support to Kenya after the African country's troubled Olympic Committee refused to make changes to its constitution, a decision that could lead to a ban. The IOC wants a series of new regulations addressing issues of good governance within the National Olympic Committee of Kenya, or NOCK, which has been tackling problems regarding doping, mismanagement, and political pressure for some time. The IOC says it is set to discuss the matter at its executive board meeting in Pyeongchang next week to give its decision on whether to give any further action. A possible ban would mean Kenya would not be allowed to send a team to the Olympic Games. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump aims for the city of Los Angeles to host the 2024 Summer Games and will make accommodations to his immigration policies. Trump ensures free access to people who will compete in the Games.
Donald Trump has expressed his direct interest to the head of the IOC in having us win. He's invited the head of the IOC, Thomas Bach, to come visit him in the White House. He wants the Olympic Games badly enough.
Los Angeles, which hosted the Olympic Games in 1932 and 1984, is seeking to host the Summer Games for a third time, competing against Paris in 2024. The International Olympic Committee is set to make its selection in September 2017. Aaron Romero, UNTV News and Rescue, New York.
The maker of smart sunglasses says they are not just for tech geeks. Nino Armilio will tell us why.
A smartphone in the form of a pair of glasses. The Blade 3000s are game-changing smart glasses you would be proud of wearing in public. These smart glasses have a quad-core processor in them and run Android 5.0. The pair has an 8-megapixel camera that looks out into the real world. Those who wear these glasses can view and interact with video and digital content appearing as 3D floating holograms.
I mean, this is basically a smartphone, but in the form of a pair of glasses. Nobody has been able to do this yet. There's competitors out there with these big, bulky things, heavy, etc. These things are 2.8 ounces. They're as light as a conventional pair of sunglasses. Everything in, including the batteries.
The Blade 3000s also feature a head motion tracker, built-in noise-canceling microphones with speech recognition, and gesture control using an integrated touchpad at the temple. Meanwhile, the Blade 3000s will be available for purchase in the second half of 2017, expected to cost around $500. Nina Armilio, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
So, have a happy weekend.
Happy weekend to Jego and to all our viewers.
Tell Jego.
Yeah. Happy weekend, Jego.
Thanks, Darlene. Okay, guys, happy weekend. And those are the reasons behind the news. March 10, 2017. I'm Angelo Castro III.
Reasons we delivered to you as they unfold. I'm Darlene Basingan.
Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Thank you for watching Y News.